Hello, everyone. They say serve the best wine for the last. Now, in this case, the title also is very apt. It's best served chilled. Uh, the next speaker that I'm about to introduce to you needs no introduction. He's a household name for most digital marketeers. Um, the author of Lost and Found, Rand Fishkin. Can I have Rand Fishkin on stage, please? Rand, welcome to Paperflite. Welcome to Unmute. It is such a pleasure to have you with us, Rand.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure here, Rand. And I'm going to admit this, and I have my entire company in front of me right now. And I was looking for the vocabulary. What would that be? I'm not sure if man crush is still a word, but that's what I have had with you for over a number of years. And this is truly a big fanboy moment for us. And it's a pleasure for me to host you with us today, Rand.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am thrilled to be here. Really glad that we could make this work.
Fantastic. Brent, I know we are on a fireside chat mode. I've got a couple of questions lined up for you, but I'm going to ask the most difficult question to begin with, Brent. Are you up for the challenge, Brent?
Let's do it.
Who is your hairstylist, Brent?
Who's my hairstylist? His name's DeMarcus. He's here in Seattle. He's a phenomenal stylist. He runs a barbershop called The Singing Barber. You can check him out when you're in Seattle.
I'm sure. And I noticed there's a lot of Twitter chat about the amazing hairstyle and how that is the envy of most marketers out there. And I don't know how you've been managing to maintain that over the last decade or so. So that was the most difficult question that I had, and I'm glad we now have an official answer to that. Right.
Man, now I wish I'd done my hair better this morning.
The follow-on question to that is: does Geraldine get jealous of your hair?
Right. Ooh, man, I don't think so. She's got pretty great hair herself. I think she's pretty happy with my hair generally.
Awesome, Rand, and as I was reading through a lot of what you had shared about after SparkToro, and especially right after the Lost and Found, there's so many things that one could ask. And I want to start off saying, why SparkToro? Or what were some of the ideas that you had that were evaluating post-Moz, and how did you narrow down to SparkToro?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, so I knew that I wanted to have another shot at trying to prove myself as an entrepreneur. So I wanted to build another company rather than going to work for somebody else. I also wanted a business that was very different in its stylistic approach, right? In terms of how we raise money, in terms of how we hired and built a team, in terms of what we were foundationally doing from a marketing and content and product perspective. But I also wanted a little bit of a head start. And so I knew, that building something in the marketing software universe was going to give me, a lot of advantages, because this is an audience that I already reach and have familiarity with. Absolutely. And, know how to market to and build for. SparkToro, though, came about because while in my last few years at Moz, especially when I was trying to help businesses that either struggled to get search traffic or where search was not the best marketing channel, right? So right. In some cases, people go to Google, they search for what they want, and then they buy from the businesses that come up. But in a lot of cases, that's not how the customer discovery process goes. And when that's not the case, there's just not a lot of great opportunities and options out there for software that tells people, oh, here's where you can go to effectively market your business, product, service. That's what we wanted to build with SparkToro, right? A way to say, here are the sources of influence for any field, and here's how you can get in front of them. And that kind of market research on demand was just not in existence. And so we had this idea for SparkToro.
Fantastic. And Ryan, if I may say, ask, what was the second idea that you had? You probably crossed off the list before you went to SparkToro, if that's okay for you to share. Ryan.
I strongly considered building an alternative to Google Analytics, but it's just such a complicated, challenging field. And Google Analytics is free. I think it's very tough to compete with free.
It is indeed, Ryan. And thank you for sharing that. The topic was best served chill, right? And I hope you love that. What is chill work according to you, Ryan?
Yeah, so chill work is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum from hustle culture, right? So the idea with hustle culture in the work world is that you are working hard, not exclusively or not with the primary focus being the results that you get from that work, but with the aim of taking pride in how much you work, how long your hours are. It's working hard for the sake of working hard.
Right.
And chill work is the absolute opposite. It's working only as much as is minimally necessary in order to get the most important things done and leave everything else aside. Chill work is focusing on outcomes and results, not on inputs and amount of hours and work quantity. Chill work is about working when it's best for you to work, right? When you have the time and the inclination, when you are in a headspace and a physical, health space to do your best work, rather than about demanding, a rigorous, attention to a particular schedule. So right. Chill work for me is often done on a Saturday morning instead of a Monday morning. It's done on, a Thursday afternoon instead of, every day. It's done after I've had a few days off, rather than being always on. And I think the other thing that's important about, chill work as we conceive it at SparkToro is that it is done in service to the rest of our lives. Right. So, Casey and Amanda, my coworkers, they have families and kids and lots of other obligations. I have lots of other obligations outside of SparkToro. And it's not that SparkToro work ever comes last. It certainly doesn't, but it is about a healthy balance of prioritizing all the things in one's life rather than saying work comes first, everything else is subservient to that.
Absolutely. And Rand, in a lot of ways, as a founder yourself, it kind of percolates from you to kind of propagate that culture of chill work across the company. Yeah. And I know a lot of marketeers out there who may not have the luxury of doing it company-wide. Do you think this as a concept is something that needs to be company-wide, or is that something where individual teams could practice that as well? Can you share some insights about that?
I think almost everyone can benefit from the concept of chill work at least a little bit. And that's not to say I don't think that every person has the freedom to decide to do it for themselves, right? Your boss, your team, whatever, right. your company culture may not allow you to fully embrace all the concepts that I've described that are part of chill work. But for example, you personally in your own work can make the decision that, gosh, when I'm well rested and when I am feeling, physically and emotionally healthy, and when I am in a good headspace, I get so much done in just a few hours of work. Maybe I can try pulling back on the quantity of work that I do and actually get more output and higher quality output in the hours that I do work. That would be one big lesson that I think almost everyone could take away from chill work. I think another thing you can do is to recognize that right now there is a lot more jobs and job opportunities than there are people to take them. Right? We are in a strange, that has not been true for a long time, but today it is true. You have freedom and flexibility to pick where you want to work and who you want to work for. And so having those conversations with your boss or your team or the CEO and saying, hey, I see what they're doing over at SparkToro and having a lot of success. And maybe we could embrace some of those ideas. Maybe, 50 and 60-hour work weeks and being always on is not a healthy thing. And I'm not sure how long I can stay here in an environment like that. And I've got a lot of other opportunities. So
Absolutely.
maybe we start those conversations and you can start those conversations, in an empathetic manner, but that's something you can talk to about with, a new employer too. If you're going on a
Right.
job interview and they say, we love you, we want to hire you, you can say, guess what? I'm going to do amazing work, but I'm not going to do 50 hours of work.
Absolutely. And I wanted to just follow on with that to say, like you said, if you look at a typical marketing calendar of most companies, and if you want to break it down by the week, they're probably going to have a couple of line items which would say, 3 blog posts this week, 1 long form content, 1 white paper a month, 5 social media posts, right? And that's really what most of our marketing calendars are looking like. And what we're really saying is, move away from that quantity based to quality, right? And over the last 17 months of your time at SparkToro, and you talked about how specifically at Moz, this constant need to publish a new blog post every day versus what you currently do is kind of yielding you better results. Could you kind of dive a little deeper to talk about the specifics and how do we go back and create a business case of sorts to people that this in fact is better?
Yeah, so I think this is about looking again at results rather than inputs, and it's a difficult thing to change culturally. Like, for example, Moz had a lot of kind of content calendar commitments, like you mentioned, and SparkToro has very few. We basically have 2. We have our email newsletter that we send out. We try not to miss that, right? If there was a month where, Amanda and I just couldn't get it done and something was going wrong, sure, we might delay it. That would be fine. But generally speaking, we try and commit to that. I think the cultural norm here is about saying, let's commit to fewer things and let's commit to doing the few things that we do extraordinarily well and in a way that we
Right.
can that we know adds value for our subscribers, rather than burning ourselves out by massively overcommitting, trying to do everything, trying to get out a blog post every night, trying to whatever it is, get out an email every day. I think signing up to do less and do it better is an option that not enough, especially content marketers, are exploring.
Right. Especially when we measure our output by the number of words that we are trying to create, right? Sometimes it's not even about the number of blog posts. It really counts to a word count as well. And I could really see a lot of my content marketers in the team nodding their head. And hopefully I'm going to get more demands of chill work starting next Monday, Rand. But I think it's on a good shift right there.
And I think that, the question here is, can you switch up the culture from, the requirement is a number of posts or a number of emails or a number of, whatever it is, words in an article, and instead make the requirement, how do we get, X many new customers next month? Or how do we keep, the customers that we've got coming back the month after? And if those are your inputs, then the commitment is different, right? Then it's about, okay, how do we, whatever it is, satisfy the client better? Or how do we have a bigger impact on their traffic and their customer retention and their, quality of customers that they're attracting and their conversion rate? And maybe spending 3 months on a new landing page is better than sending out 90 blog posts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Brian, and Rand, I remember a conversation that you had with Brian and from Typeform on part of the meaningful conversation, with something that struck a chord with me is you talked to him about how we need to shift our focus from, let's say, in the case of Typeform, instead of making Typeform available when people search for online surveys versus making people want to search for Typeform, right? Now, that's a very interesting perspective. How does one go about doing that? Can you go a level deeper into say what kind of activities or what kind of areas to focus to kind of generate that thought process?
Yeah, this is at the core of what's called brand marketing, right? You're essentially, rather than trying to say, how do we rank well for generic search terms that might lead people to us, you are instead focusing on how do we make people who have the problem that we solve think of us first, right? So
Right,
that is comprised of earning their attention through sources they already pay attention to, getting them into your email list, serving them with essentially content and resources and helpful connections and meaningful relationships. It could be with webinars and events and Q&As, right? It could be
right,
with connections on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. It could be through in-person meetings, right? The options and opportunities are large and vastly varied, but brand marketing fundamentally is about the idea that you are creating in the mind of your potential customer an association between the problem that they have and your solution to that problem,
right,
rather than trying to sort of reach the customer through some other source that they're already searching. So it's not, I want to come up at the top of Google, or I want to bid on my competitor's brand terms, or I want to, whatever it is, show up in their ad flow after they visited, Google's ad network after they visited our website, targeting or remarketing. That those things can have an influence on brand marketing, but at the core, and when they think about that problem, they think about our solution.
right.
That is something, unfortunately, a lot of search and content marketers haven't paid a ton of attention to, haven't focused on in the sort of modern era of digital marketing. But I think it's incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Rand, as you talk about this, and I know one of the most common conversation that got started when we talked about chill work as a concept is it applicable for people who have been there, who have kind of established themselves, and then they kind of get to relax? And I did get a chance to read a lot of your inputs on, no, it could be for a beginner as well. It's really about how you set the standard. What would you say to people who think that you've got some over ambitious team members, and then there are a set of team members who really like to take it chill? How do you strike that balance, and not really from a company culture perspective?
I think um, it probably makes the most sense to set the culture at the top and then have that percolate down and be something that is embraced by everyone. Because I do agree with you. I think you get a lot of frustration and conflict when you have, people who sort of love the hustle and they're kind of
Right.
living to work, and people who embrace chill work. I think that those two concepts and those two styles of work don't go great together, especially on the same teams in the
Absolutely.
same companies. So, I think that one of the things you might do is you might say, hey, I'm a hustler. I want to find companies that, embrace and support and reward the kind of addiction to work that I've got. I'm using addiction not necessarily negatively,
Right.
but and then in the inverse scenario, if you are someone who loves the idea of chill work and of sort of working to live and balancing priorities and sort of doing your best work in a few hours rather than being always on. I think that it's very reasonable to go search out companies that offer that, right? And there are, not all of them are going to, chill work is terminology that we use at SparkToro,
Yes.
but it's not necessarily something folks will advertise. But you can have those conversations and figure out the company culture of the places you're joining, right? Is this a place that rewards input in terms of number of hours? Or is this a place that rewards output in terms of results, and you don't really care about how many hours it takes me?
Absolutely. Rand, before I go into the Q&A with a couple of questions that we've received from our audience, here's one last question. And I see this is actually from Brian. He did have a mention on the article that he had written about you, that if we bribe you with enough good pasta and fancy cocktails, that you might be willing to pull back curtain on some of the dark tech secrets. And you see, Unmute is all about untold marketing stories. So what is that one dark secret that you haven't shared yet that you might be willing to share with our audience today, Rand?
Ooh, one dark secret. I mean, I share a lot of things, so I don't know that there's a whole bunch of things that I don't share. I think instead, right, when I say tech's dark secrets, what I mean is things that they won't share.
Yes,
so for example,
exactly.
Yeah. So for example, one thing that's true that I was just talking about earlier today on Twitter is that 10 years ago, when I was doing SEO and a lot of content marketing at Moz, if you wanted to be successful in, search, social, content, email channels, you could often do that with exactly the same piece of content, right? I could publish a single blog post that would rank well in Google, do well on Twitter, do well on LinkedIn, get some action on Facebook, do well in my email newsletter.
Right.
Today, that's not the case anymore. And this is because
Right.
the networks have bifurcated and segmented
Right.
what they're optimizing for. And so instead, I would, when I do content marketing now, I think about this piece of content is for my email subscribers. This piece of content is for this webinar audience. This piece of content is for Google rankings. This piece of content is to do well on Twitter and LinkedIn. Those are all, they might be around a similar subject, but they are all different URLs. They are different pieces of content. And that is because those different channels have different requirements to succeed. This is one of, I think, the secrets of the marketing world that's not talked about as much. And there's a few folks who absolutely do it and do it well, but there's still a lot of belief among marketing agencies and clients that you should be using that 10-year-old method of one piece of content that does well in all those channels.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Rand. And I have two questions from the audience. Interestingly, it's circling back to Geraldine. I hope she's not getting too many of her hiccups now that we're talking about her name more often here. So the question is, who is a better cook? Is it Rand or is it Geraldine?
Depends what we're making. I think I'm generally...
Well, I know that that's a very diplomatic answer, Rand, but
yeah. So for
if you
example,
have to tie a number to it.
Geraldine is a much better cook with fish and seafood. Like she's great at that. And she's a better baker by far. But, if you're looking for sort of classic like proteins and pasta and grains, that's probably me. So
fantastic.
There you go.
Well, that was
a good team.
Very good answer. Very good answer, Rand. The final question. You produce some absolutely no-nonsense content. Where do you get your ideas from?
A lot of them come from social media. A lot of them come from my email, right? So people ask me questions all day, every day on email, and I get inspired by a lot of that. I also consume a tremendous amount of content, right? So I read a lot of articles. That's from places like LinkedIn and Hacker News and my Google News feed and Pocket, and I think those are where I kind of collect a lot of the knowledge that I use to inform what I write about.
Fantastic. Rand, that kind of concludes us for this session, and I cannot thank you enough for being so generous with your thoughts, ideas, and some of the dark tech secrets with us. It truly has been a pleasure having you with us. Until next time, thank you so much, Rand. Take care.
Yeah, great to be here. All right, take care. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.